Okay. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Ingrid. I'm a data analyst working at Muse, and I'm going to be presenting you how to build trustworthy analytic models for Fintech. So before going straight into the point, I would like to know how many of you have ever worked with perfectly clean data sets? Okay, I can see anyone have. I would also like to know how many of you have worked with Fintech data before? Okay, so a few of you. I started working at Muse like 2 years ago in the Fintech team. It was a pretty new team and it was growing a lot. And meanwhile it was growing, we started to have a lot of questions like, what does this field mean? What is the logic behind these metrics? We had different logics for the same metrics. And it's something normal. If you have ever worked in a startup or in a newly created team, it's something that is very usual. They need answers very, very fast. You need to build things quickly. But it becomes a moment in which the company or the team is more mature, and then you need to stop and start building and rebuild again these models. This happened to us like 6 months ago, and it's what I'm going to be talking to you about. Why this matters is because especially in Fintech, the data discrepancies impact directly in revenue. So it's very relevant, especially because we have multiple payment providers, such as Stripe and Adyen, that we make our models scalable and also reliable. The first thing that we should look into is what we want to track. What we did is we grouped these metrics into 3 buckets. The first bucket would be revenue and margin insights. Here, what we are measuring is business metrics, like the fees that are collected, like the refunds, or the margins. The second bucket would be payment flow health. Here, what we are looking at is chargeback rates or share of wallet. What we can discover with this is identifying potential risks, bugs, or even a loss of adoption. And with the third bucket, it would be product usage and adoption. Here, these are contextual metrics in which we are measuring, for example, volume by channel, volume by method. And what we are looking at is we are understanding how the product is being used and also if the adoption is growing or lagging. Why this matters is because this helps us drive business and product strategy. It also tracks the financial performance. It helps us catch bugs earlier and that it doesn't snowball into bigger issues. And it also helps us align across the teams so that they only have one single source of truth. So aligning on these operational metrics is one of the most critical parts. And the first thing that we should do is we should understand what dashboards and what reports we have, look into what metrics are being tracked. And one of the key parts is speaking to the top management and PMs, because they are the ones that know what will drive decisions. Once we have done that, what we would do is we would build these metrics and we would compare them with the ones that we already have if we have them in place. In case there are some discrepancies, we should look into them and we could find like potentially uncoverage cases, or we could find some gaps with the old logic. In our case, for example, I wanted to give you an example. We did this with the gross share of wallet. For the people that haven't worked with Fintech data before, what this metric means is all the volume that is processed by Muse, in our case, that we get a commission from this, versus all the volume that is processed in the properties. So what did happen to us is that we were covering all kinds of transactions, and we were including some anomalous payments. So in some cases, what had happened is that the share of wallet was over 100%, which didn't make sense. So what we did is we only included the payments and we excluded these anomalous payments. So this metric became much more trustworthy for the leadership. Apart from this, structuring well the DBT repository is very relevant. What we decided to do is a layered approach that this consists in 4 layers. The first layer would be the source layer, that it includes the raw data that is loaded from external systems into our databases. The second would be the staging layer. What it does, it cleans and standardizes the raw data. The third layer would be the intermediate layer. Here we start doing some transformations that are coming from the staging layer. And in the marked layer, it would be only in this layer where the business logic sits, so that this model is ready for use for the business. It would include some fact and dimension tables or an aggregated data set. Some benefits of this is that it helps data maintain, it helps data to be very clear and maintainable, and it also ensures modularity. And this is very relevant because then the models can be reused. So that the models are scalable, they also need to be understandable. We have been focusing especially on this because it's not only relevant that it's understandable for you, but also, for example, for any other person that will pick this model like 6 months from now. So we focus a lot on documenting and commenting. What we try to do is in DBT, we try that all our fields have a very clear definition in the DBT YAML files. We also use, in case we are doing some transformations and we consider that the transformation is not very intuitive, we try to use some inline comments and explain it. We also, apart from this, have created some Confluence pages in which we are explaining why we are taking, for example, certain approaches, how we are structuring our DBT repository, or, for example, the data quality test that we are doing. And last but not least, we also participated in a company-wide project about commenting standards, that what this enables is that, or what this ensures is that all data analysts will have the same practices for all the tools that we work with, like DBT, Looker, or Databricks. So what we do there is we explain how the comment should be, where they should be commenting, and in case, for example, some stakeholder or ownership should be included too. Okay, so in our case, we are also working with external data. So in some cases, it happens that we have missing data, there is some duplications, or there is some timing differences. Some solutions for this that, to be honest, we are still implementing is we would need to run data reconciliation models to compare these internal and external data. For example, for this, we had one case in which we discovered that we had 2 metrics that were being merged into one field. And because we started to comparing it with external data, we understood that the volume that was being brought was totally wrong. So this was very relevant because it was a new feature that was going to be a high revenue feature. It was in the beta phase. So we raised our hand very quickly. The developers or the data engineers worked on it, fixed the bug, and it didn't have a real impact when it went live. The other one would be applying business rules to detect this missing information or duplicated data. And the third one would be setting some tolerance thresholds so that we could create some alerts that they would trigger in case these thresholds were exceeded. Some other best practices for DBT would be DBT testing, like for schema and uniqueness. For example, in this high revenue feature that I was commenting, suddenly we saw that our DBT test started to fail, and it was because we started to have duplicated transaction IDs. This means this is a very big problem because this means the volume is being doubled. So imagine if we don't detect that, we would be reporting very wrong numbers. As this feature was still on beta phase, it didn't have an impact. The data was not running because our models were not working because of this. So the engineers worked into this, it was fixed, and there was not a very big impact on this. The second one would be having a clear documentation of all transformations. In this way, any data analyst that want to use our models or that needs to understand it, they can go into there and they will have no doubt. They don't even have to ask us a question. And the third one would be making sure that we have version control and peer reviews. In our case, it's totally mandatory. Any change we do in dbt or even in Looker, we need another person to review it. And if they don't review it, the change is not going to be effective. For example, an example would be we were building a metric that was relevant for our team. It needed a conversion to euros, and the person that built it did the conversion to euros the wrong way. It's normal, we are human, so it can happen. But the person that was reviewing identified super quickly, they fixed it, and it didn't affect production. Okay. Regarding dbt testing, we decided to do the testing layered approach, that it's what it's recommended by dbt. So what we would have is in the source part, we would have the testing about uniqueness and data freshness, for example. Like if in 18 hours, no data is loaded, then we will have a warning. If it isn't loaded in 24 hours, then it will trigger an alert into Slack. So we will be notified. In the staging layer, that it's when we are cleaning up the data. For example, we would have data like that has a status of deleted, for example. It should have a deleted timestamp. If not, it would trigger a warning too. In the intermediate layer, we also make sure that the IDs are linked to a related table. And in the mart layer, we are looking at the business logic. We are making sure that all the heavily reporting metrics have a value there. Okay, so to sum up, firstly, I would say that like the most critical part is defining and aligning the metrics. Like you need to go with the stakeholders. This will take a lot of time. It took more time than we thought, even, because there are a lot of times that people come from different backgrounds. They want different things. It's normal, but it's the most relevant part for us. The second one would be regarding schema validation, regarding peer review, regarding dbt testing. Like it's very relevant that we try to put all the guardrails we can so that nothing fails, or at least we try to prevent it. And the third one would be validating with external data sources. It's the only way which we can identify some bugs, because sometimes with internal data, we think it's correct, but validating and doing these reconciliation models will help us to detect this. This is everything from my side. Here you have a QR code. It goes directly to the best practices on dbt. It's what we used for building these models, and it was super useful for us. So I hope it's useful for you too. Thank you.